Hello, and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. Tonight's guest is Sarah Marshall. Hi, Sarah. How are you this evening?
I'm great, and I so appreciate the cheers on the way in. I
I
feel
know,
very
right?
welcome.
I have a whole sound bar over here, but I rarely use anything but the intro music and the cheering. Let's see. Wait, I could probably I think maybe I could. There we go.
I've got my dance on.
I know, right? I have quite a few. I sometimes forget what each one does because I don't use them very often. So we were chatting a little bit before, like I try to do with all my guests. Basically, it's my rundown time. But I'd love to start right into speaking about your journey. You mentioned that Play of Dust in My Soul, it took over 20 years to shape. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, and that's because I'm slow. I had this idea in the mid-2000s for this story, couldn't convince anybody else to write it, so I had to write it myself, but I was not a novelist. I was a business writer, technical writer, whatever, but I didn't know how to write fiction. So it took me 20 years of working, and it was sort of like at a mountain of information and like a sculptor looking at a rock. I had to figure out where the horse was in it. And so I
Ah,
spent 20 years carving it into the horse.
nice. I feel you on that. I've written a few books myself. I've written 15, and so I get it. And I'm still not thinking that I know what I'm doing. So I can relate.
You want me
Um,
to write an article on work stuff? I can do that in, an hour. But writing
mhm.
a story that people want to read, that is a completely different thing.
It is, and you know what? In the very beginning, I'll be honest with you, I always cared about all the reviews and all the comments until one day I got like a 5 paragraph. I mean, someone really wrote 5 paragraphs, these very detailed 5 paragraphs on reviews. And as I did, I read them and I was like going through and they're just ripping me up from just all over the place, just tearing my book to shreds. And then the very last paragraph, like, they were like, "But where's book 4?"
Here's where you fall short, but give me more.
Right. So ever since then excuse me, ever since then, I don't read them anymore. I just kinda like I do it for me. If it's something that I wanna read, then I go for it.
That's what finally had me ready to publish. I got it to the point that I was reading through it and I was enthralled. I had to keep reading because I liked it so much. And it wasn't that
Right?
I thought I was this great writer. It was a story I wanted to read and I just wanted to keep reading it. And I really liked the characters and that when I got to that point, I thought, okay, it's ready.
Right? Okay, so are you a pantser? I mean, by the pants, you write, or are you a plotter? Do you plot it all out, put it on a board, make a bunch of notes?
Oh yes. That's my short
To
answer.
both? Which one
So
we going here?
So, just a little bit of background about me. I'm a chemical engineer by degree. Everything
Okay.
I do everything I do is structured and planned and blah, 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 blah.
Mm,
So when I went to write this book, I planned everything. I planned the trajectories of the characters and the backstories and the humana hana, and I did everything. And when it came down to really carving a story out of it, eventually I had to give all that up to let the story flow the way it needed to flow.
I got you. I got you. I'll be honest with you, I did that with my first book. I plotted everything out, and technically, the first book was part of a series. And well, technically, it was my second book, but I didn't publish the first until after the first season of the first book, of the second set of books. But I plotted it out like no other. But I am by the pants now. I'll be honest with you, I just love not knowing how it's gonna end. It's like I'm reading it from the first time. I'm like, "Okay, what happens next?" I'm so enthused, and then I realize, "Dang it, I gotta write this thing."
That's where I got to. I had this really clear path when I originally plotted it out, and the book today looks nothing like that. And I eventually had to get to, where are these characters going to take this? What's their next move that's in integrity with that character, and that will earn them that next step. And the book wrote itself ultimately.
Mm, I get that. I get that. So now, what was the moment when you realized the story wasn't just an idea anymore? What was the something that truly said, I needed to finish this?
I think it was, I had this idea. I wanted to tell this story because I was really inspired by events that happened to me or people I met, etc. And I realized, and I got it all down on paper, and that didn't necessarily, that was just, how do I put this? I was compelled to get it down on paper, but it took time for me to really get passionate about it turning into a story. And I'm
Mhm.
somebody that's very good at getting critique and taking the critique in and then going after the issues. For me, I would write it, I would get the feedback, I would go into despair. I'd put it down sometimes for years, and then I'd pick it back up and do it. So I guess, after 20 years of working on it, there was something that happened mid last year that I started seeing what the story was. And that's when I got passionate and I couldn't put it down till I got it right.
I can see that. Now, your background spans a lot. Like you already told me a little bit about your career, and you mentioned that play. No, I'm sorry, wrong one. Got to
Yeah.
skip down to my next paragraph here. Okay, so military,
Yep.
firefighting,
Yep.
engineering,
Yep.
community leadership. Now, when you look back at all these chapters, which experience do you feel most deeply influenced the emotional core of this particular story that you wrote?
Yeah, there's two things that did that.
Mm.
So all this stuff that you just described is all real. It's my history, and it was
Mhm.
all sublimating myself for was struggling with, and that was that I was trans, and I had to deal with that. And until I dealt with that,
Mhm.
everything else was all motion without progress.
Right.
So, so that happened in the mid to late '90s. I was going through that process,
Mhm.
and it shifted everything for me. And I'll give you some, quick examples. I was seen as this really driven leader until I transitioned. And then all those qualities as a man that I exhibited that made me this driven leader that people would follow made
Mhm.
me a bitch. So, so,
Welcome to my world.
so I had to completely rewire how I engaged
Mhm.
with the world, with my
Mhm.
work, and everything. And
It's
so
shocking, isn't it? It's really
it,
shocking.
it's so radical that it was really hard to get my balance. I mean, it took
Mhm.
years to get my feet on the ground. So that was piece one, and I would say that was a good thing that I did, but it also led me to this arena of feeling really off balance and unsure of who I was, and how do I engage the world, and what is my identity. And then the second big thing happened that drove the writing of this book, and that's I attended Burning Man for the first time. And
Mhm.
the short of it is, and I'm sure we'll get into, the experiences I had that really drove writing this book, but the short of it was that going to Burning Man, I had my identity as a trans person kind of in front of me, and that was unconscious. I didn't realize that I was putting that between me and everybody else until I
Mhm.
went to Burning Man, and out there, being trans was the least interesting thing about me. So I had to deal with the fact that I was putting that in the way of my connections with other people. And
Mm.
that is the genesis of this book. And this book, if you could summarize it in one word, is about belonging and our relationships with belonging.
Mhm. That's pretty deep. Now, you did mention Birdie Man, and you did 20 years as a Birdie Man village leader?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't always a village leader in 20 years. I I participated at first I didn't participate with anybody, then I participated in a camp which became a village. Then I became the leader of the village for years, and I stepped down, and then I stepped back up and down, and I kept every time I stepped back into the leadership role and I wanted to leave the place a little bit better for having been in the leadership position. So yeah, I've had many rounds of experience leading and then stepping back and participating.
Now, can you explain just a little bit because not everybody that may listen may be familiar with a Burning Man. Can you explain the gist of it?
Yes. So it's an event that is unique to all other events that I've ever participated in. It's you can't go to anything else and feel like you have an experience of Burning Man because it's so different. And it's different
Mhm.
in a couple it it is on the Black Rock Desert, one of the most remote places in the United States. It's north central Nevada, and it's on a alkali lake bed that's 100 miles long. So it's about 100 miles long, it's about 15, 20 miles wide depending on where you are, and literally there is nothing out there, not a weed, plant, bird, animal of any kind except for what you bring out there. And the event is designed to it operates on 10 key principles, and it's part art festival, it is part EDM festival, it is part just transformational, and it's in one of the most intense environments in the world with some of the most intense activities on the playa, and it's the fourth largest city in Nevada for a week. It's a temporary city.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, my producer, Laura, who's got herself on mute, is out that way.
Oh, so she knows.
I'm assuming she does. If she can hear me, Laura in the room there, tick, tick. She's from Arizona. We cross time zones here to work together, but she's the best. I wouldn't have anybody else. So now you say there's events. Oh yeah, she's heard of it. There she goes. She said she's heard of it before. Ha ha. So tell me about the events that they have at Burning Man.
Yeah, so it's really interesting that the BMorg, the Burning Man organization that manages and sets up the event every year, in essence, creates a grid of streets and some nascent outpost buildings to do emergency services and communal services and that sort of thing. But basically, the city is built by the people that come out there. So when I said I was a village leader, what that means is we put together multiple camps into a village, and we request and receive every year an allotment of real estate upon which we can have our little village. We build it up, and we provide services to the Black Rock citizenry, the folks that come out there. And what I mean by that is one of the key principles of Burning Man that's really affected me is what's called the gift economy. And what that is there's no buying, selling, or bartering out there. There's no commercialization. All you can do is come out with all the stuff you need to take care of yourself and then something more for the rest of the community. And it could be something simple like a trinket or a service, or it could be something really big like building a camp and providing things for people to do in the camp. And so it's all predicated on contribution. So if you were walking down the street in your town and somebody offered you something for free, you would be suspicious. I would be suspicious.
Oh yeah.
But if you do that at Burning Man, it is standard, it's standard fare. So what happens is the social walls between people
Mhm.
disintegrate, and you have this immediate, intense connection with other human beings like in no other place.
Hmm. Now, how long does Burning Man usually last?
It lasts for the week before Labor Day. So it starts on a Sunday and goes through the Labor Day Monday. So 8 days. But if you're out there building, you can come out up to a week before, or sometimes even more, depending on what you're doing. And then you might stay for up to a week afterwards. I've been out there for 3 full weeks building, having the event and then tearing things
Mhm.
down for my village.
Yeah, I was
But
just gonna ask, do you take everything down when you're done? You just answered that.
So, so another one of the principles is leave no trace. So literally
Mm,
nothing lands on the playa. You have to leave the place pristine. So for example, if somebody's smoking a cigarette, they are tapping the ashes into some kind of container. Because nothing is allowed on the ground. So that's another one of those principles so yes, you're in this temporary city, this liminal space that we all build. It's never stable because we're either building or tearing down stuff, and you
mm.
just are in the flow of this thing being something different every moment.
That's interesting. Now, there's something really powerful in what you said about going from outsider to welcome participant.
Yes.
How did that personal transition shape both your identity and the way you write your characters?
Yeah. So one of the characters is a trans woman who's very similar to me. Her experiences, she's much more broken than I was, and her
Mhm,
experiences are much more dramatized, but the arc is very similar. I went out there, I had 2 groups that were trying to talk me into going out there, so I went out with one group, and I
mhm,
never quite landed anywhere. I was kind of operating between these 2 groups, and I never was really fully part of anything. And one of the things that was driving me when I went out there, and this is that identity thing that I had to deal with, is I felt very alone. There was at that time it was 18,000 people. Now it's more like 80,000 people that go out there. But I
wow.
was yeah, it's pretty massive, but I felt alone. And one of the things that I realized by about Thursday, because I was ready to go home, I was just done. I was lonely and I didn't feel good out there. And what I realized, one of the key principles is participation. And I wasn't participating, I was observing. And so I
Mhm,
felt completely isolated as an observer while everybody else was participating. And I woke up one morning. I had, for some reason, brought 12 cantaloupes out there, cut up the cantaloupes, and I just walked around offering free bites of cantaloupe to people. It was a simple act, but it was something that started to get me to participate.
mhm,
And what I realized is one of these groups I felt particularly close to, and I didn't camp with them. But I realized what was going on for me is I had it that this group of people that I saw as, relatively straight, I had it unconsciously that I was a novelty to them and they just had me around as a kind of a conversation piece. And as soon as I gave up that ridiculous thought and I put my
mhm,
arms down, they welcomed me in with love. So what I realized was I was the one keeping myself from being in connection, in love, in support, in community. And
mhm.
that completely transformed my relationship with community. So obviously I eventually became a community leader because of that. But but before that, I couldn't see that. It took me going out to this really intense environment and having to figure myself out.
Right. You know, I think that something I used to say to the kids, my nieces and nephews, that when you put the positivity in yourself, it's how it's your mind setting. You know what I mean? Like if you put yourself in a good frame of mind, it actually generates and people want to be around that. When you're like feel good about who you are and put yourself out there a little bit, or am I just positively thinking here? Because I have personally found when I'm more put myself out there and are happier about myself, it draws more people into you.
So that I would have to say that is absolutely correct. What happened was after that I became completely comfortable with myself. And
Yeah.
I have traveled for work or pleasure to tons of remote locations. I've been out in central China, I've been all over Asia, I've been down in South America, I've been in northern Africa, and I've never had an issue with anyone as a trans woman.
Mhm.
Nobody has ever bothered me, nobody's ever stopped me, nobody's they may be giving me a look or whatever, but I've never had a bad experience. So I would say the largest part of why that is because I got comfortable with myself and I got comfortable being okay being anywhere as myself.
Mhm. Right. So now the book wasn't created alone. It sounds like it became a shared effort with your daughter and your early readers. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, so I shared early versions of that, the poor people that had to read those early versions. I really feel for them. So I would I would share it, get critique, and then, take another round and go forward. My daughter, who's now 27,
Mhm.
as she became a reader, and she became a reader very early, she wanted to read my book, even I think even before high school. And she got very attached to the story and the characters. So as I was adjusting and making it a better story, she was the person that would read something I would write and say, that character wouldn't do that. That isn't thing. And she became the heart and soul of the characters. So she very much was a mirror for that. And if you look at the cover art or the art inside the book, she did all of that. She
Oh,
eventually went to
nice.
college, became a graphic artist. She took the pictures, she created all the graphics inside the book. So yes, she is very much was my partner in bringing this thing to fruition. But I had
That's
other
wonderful.
people in my life that were cheerleaders that just wouldn't let me put it down.
Right, that's wonderful. Now, what kind of with this kind of collaboration, what did it teach you about letting go of control and trusting other voices in your creative process?
Well, that's an interesting question. And this is true in my work life as well as with this book, is I know I can put good stuff to paper or I have good ideas, etc., but they never
Mhm,
get great until they're in the crucible of critique and feedback and really looking at where I'm falling short on whatever that thing is. In this case, in telling the story.
mhm,
So those collaborations, and the reason why I call out a couple people in the book, including my daughter, is because I don't think the book would be here but for their support. They were the ones that kept me going when I wanted to give up. So I and they and there are their contributions are real and inside the book. So I can't say this is just sure it was my idea, sure I did the writing,
mhm,
but it quit being just my story. One of my characters in the book is an artist who puts up an installation, and one of his insights as he's out there is realizing that his installation is no longer his. It becomes part of the community. And it's
mhm.
better for being part of the community. And that's how I see the work of this book.
Nice. Now, you describe the book as both, a burden and a gift, which I think a lot of creators can relate to, probably myself included. So, during those difficult stretches, what kept you going when it felt overwhelming or like it might never come together?
Yeah, so there's a big piece in there of me feeling like maybe I wasn't good enough for it. I had
Mhm,
tasked myself with something beyond my capability. And really the people that kept saying, "This story needs to be told, you need to finish it, you need to publish it,"
mhm.
are what kept me going. Because there were plenty of times in the 20 plus years that I was working on this, that I went into despair and just put it down and didn't believe I could make it happen.
I feel that. I lost my way a little bit. I have, like, 5 books I haven't even finished. Well, you know what I mean, the editing and all the other stuff that goes along with it, so I feel you. Life
Yep.
kinda gets in the way sometimes too.
Oh, yeah. My publisher is like, "Okay, what's the next version of this?" And I'm like, "Ah!"
Well, it might be better this time, though. I mean, not that this one isn't good, but it might be better in the sense that you know the path now, you know how to accomplish it. So it might come quicker than the 20 years. You know what I'm saying? Because
Oh,
you've
yeah.
already got
I Yes, you're absolutely right, and it would, because a lot of the things that took me 20 years is techniques for making characters interesting or making
Mhm.
a particular scene come to life, etcetera. Those things I feel pretty comfortable with now. Now it's back to, okay, what is the next journey that I wanna take people on? And, I have
Right.
a lot of ideas popping around. He wants me to do a revisit to Burning Man. Maybe I do that, or maybe I do something else.
Nice. Well, a second chance on that too. Do you keep doing the Burning Man since the book's creation?
Yeah, I've been out there. I just published in December, so the next
Mhm.
time would be this year. There's several reasons why I'm not going this year, but I will go next year.
Right.
And we're already planning for summer of 27 for the next round at Burning Man. And I have
Nice.
literally camped with thousands of people that have come through our village and then moved on to other things. So I have a whole family of folks out there that are always very welcoming and so lovely to spend time with them.
Now, do a lot of them know about the book? Were you Did you let them know that you were writing at the time, or is it gonna be a big surprise?
Oh, it's no surprise. People have been waiting for this for years. They
Nice, nice. You already have a, fan section. You already have following. I love it.
I do, and a number of them have read it and put put up done reviews of the book, and they've been very kind to me. So, yeah, I've definitely started with an audience.
Wonderful. Now, your story touches on reinvention, second chances, and belonging. For
Yep.
anyone listening who feels like they're too late to start over or create something meaningful, what would you want them to hear about your journey?
Yeah. So first, obviously, I'm in the I'm in my 60s. I'm
Mhm.
just published author in my 60s. So never give up. I mean, you can be creative at any age, and if you've got something that you really want to birth into the world, please do it. For me, how do I put this? Burning Man holds a special place in my heart, obviously for the things that shifted for me when I went there. But there, most people, when they hear about it, they hear about the spectacle, the,
Mhm.
tragedies that happen out there, the party that happens out there, the noise, the rain, or whatever the thing is, that it's all spectacle. What I wanted to do was really give I'm writing for two audiences. I wanted people that have been to Burning Man to read the book, see the thousands of Easter eggs that I put in the book, and go, "Oh yeah, I remember that," or or whatever that thing is. I want them to like, "Oh yeah." And I've had people read it and say, "I need to go back to Burning Man now after I read your book because you just reminded me of all the things I loved." For
Mhm.
people that haven't gone to Burning Man, and may never go, I want them to read that book and have a real lived experience of what it's like to be at Burning Man and have beyond the spectacle. What is it like a day in the life of being out there? And my characters represent very different angles of being at Burning Man. One works for the organization. Others are new to the play and never have had the experience. Some are veterans that have done it many times and they're trying to bring a specific contribution to it. But they all come broken from in terms of their ability to belong. And the story is about how each one of those characters has that journey of transformation and where they get to with it. Some great, some not so great, but that's any experience you have.
Right. So now before I let you go, what's next? I know you said you mentioned that your producer wants, I mean, yeah, your publisher, that publisher. I'm thinking of Laura. Laura, you're in my head. Your publisher wants to do another book. So is that coming? Do you have anything else coming up that our listeners would love to know about?
So yeah, so in terms of fiction work, I'm going to keep pounding the pavement on this one for a couple more months, and then I'm going to work on whatever's next. I'm still kind of do I go back to Burning Man and work on some other part aspect of it because there's certainly plenty to do with there, or
Mhm.
do I do something completely different because there's I've had a very storied life and there's plenty to pull from. So those are I haven't decided what it is. I do know that there's going to be a next. I just don't know what it looks like. I'll probably start working on it in the next couple months. On the
Well,
work side, I am just about to publish a book on the kind of work I do. So that's a whole different thing and requires a completely different set of skills.
nice. Well, I don't know if I'm all that with your work side, but you're more than welcome to always come back. I would love to give you a place for our audience to be able to listen to any work that comes from you. You've been a joy to have on the podcast.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. I so appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I enjoy having you on. I want to thank you so much for being with us this evening.
And thank you for having me.
Anytime. My door is always open. And I mean that, Sarah. You're absolutely joy. I love speaking with you.
Thank you. I've loved this. As you said, this is just going to be a conversation. Felt like we were having a cup of coffee, just chatting.
Yeah, I've been sucking on a big old thermos of water, but yeah. Exactly like it. But thank you so much for being with us. I really do enjoy having you here. You've been a great joy. My door is always open. I want to thank our listeners. As always, guys, until next time, bye bye for now.